The Tuesday, 10 a.m., May 16th, 2023, Clackamas County Administrative Issues Meeting is hereby convened. Administrator Schmidt, what is our first issue?
Thank you, Vice Chair Shull. First, Chair Smith is not feeling well and is out of the office today. Commissioner Schrader has another meeting, but will be here shortly. But we do have a quorum with 3 commissioners present. We're going to start with the Enhanced Law Enforcement District. Chair, Vice Chair, would you please convene as the Enhanced Law Enforcement District?
We will now recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Board.
This is Advisory Board and Commission appointments. Actually, Tony will lead this, Nancy, but you're welcome to be here.
For me to be present here.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, of course. So, Tony, would you please read the appointment list?
The Enhanced Law Enforcement District, staffed by Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, currently has 3 openings on their commission due to term expirations. Through a recruitment process, 5 applications were received, 3 are recommended for appointment, 2 are new, 1 is being reappointed with the board's approval. Recommendation is Caroline Parker to a first term, James Rhodes to a first term, and Mark Wells to a second term.
Okay, Commissioners, are there any comments on this list?
My iPad is not cooperating, so I'm at a loss. I move for approval.
Dan?
I'll second.
Okay, good. It's been moved by Commissioner Savas and seconded by Commissioner West. Clerk, can you take the poll?
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Vice Chair Shull.
Aye. Passes 3-0. Thank you very much.
Very good. Vice Chair, would you now please convene as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County?
We will now adjourn as the Enhanced Law Enforcement District Board and convene as the Housing Authority Board of Clackamas County.
Thank you. Joining you online is Housing Commissioner Ann Leenstra. We'll wait a moment here. Ann, good morning. One moment, please.
Good morning.
There you go. Welcome, Commissioner Leenstra. This is Housing Authority of Clackamas County, request for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of an amendment adding time, scope of work, and funding to the construction contract with Normarco Incorporated for the Housing Authority of Clackamas County wide flat work project. The amendment value is $148,500 and 60 days. The total contract value is increased to $476,500 for 240 days. Funding is through the Capital Fund federal grant and Housing Authority local project funds. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. This amendment adds 60 days to an additional funding for replacement or repair of driveways, walkways, or patios at additional housing units. It's basically going to take it from 25 units that we are at now up to 36 units that would see these repairs. These repairs are needed to ensure that we meet current U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development standards. And basically what this is we had bid it for a certain amount, and then we had to go with the houses that needed the most work, so those were prioritized. We found some other monies in our budget, so we've added that to this contract so we can get all the units that we need fixed. So that's what's happening with this particular contract.
Okay, Mr. Cook, is this going to be the final change to this contract?
Yes, it should.
Yes, it is. Okay. Commissioners, any comments? Okay.
All right. Item 2, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with Home Forward for continued resident services staff to expand programming for families living in public housing. The agreement value is $114,950.13 for 1 year with 5 one-year renewal options. Funding is through Metro Supportive Housing Services funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this would add 1 resident services specialist. Home Forward is a nonprofit that we use for these services, so we'd add 1 for them. And basically what that does is we serve about 118 now, and so this is going to be afford us the opportunity to double that amount that would be served through those services. So it's basically adding more services.
Okay. Comments, gentlemen? Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, Housing Commissioner Leenstra. Next, Vice Chair, would you please convene as Water Environment Services Board?
Yes, we will now adjourn as the Housing Authority Board of Clackamas County and convene as a Water Environment Services Board.
This is a request for consent agenda for Water Environment Services. Item 1, approval of a board order authorizing purchase of a 2024 Freightliner 114 SD truck with Owen Equipment Hydro-Vector Combination Uplift through an Oregon Cooperative Purchasing Agreement with Premier Truck Group of Portland. Total contract value is $560,601. Funding is through Water Environment Services Sanitary Sewer Construction Funds. No county general funds are involved. Greg Geist, Director of Water Environment Services, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Gary. Good morning, Commissioners. Yeah, this is a 2005 18-year-old truck that we are replacing. The current vehicle is unreliable, expensive to maintain, and needs to be modernized. Happy to answer any questions.
I got a question for you. What kind of service life do you get for $560,000?
Well, the current vehicle is 18 years old, so, I mean,
This is going to work longer because I think in your write-up here is new and improved. Is that right?
it is, yes.
Oh, good.
It has more features, yes.
Good. Gentlemen, any comments?
What's the warranty?
I don't know. Standard warrant, I don't know. Good
A
question.
lot of equipment on that.
There is.
A lot of moving pieces.
Yeah, I'll look into that. I don't know.
And it's not an EV, isn't it?
Definitely not. It
Thank
is
you.
diesel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Greg. Next, Vice Chair, would you please convene as the Clackamas County Development Agency?
Yes, we will now adjourn as the Environment Services Board and convene as the Development Agency.
This is the Development Agency, request for consent agenda. Item 1, approval of a disposition agreement with Anchor Health Properties for the sale of Development Agency property for $850,000. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Vice Chair Stoll, Commissioners. We are here to ask the board to authorize the development agreement before you today. Add it to request for consent for Thursday. We've discussed this with the board. This is a development agency property which was surplus from a right-of-way acquisition where we did a number of road projects down around Sunnyside Road and Sunnybrook Boulevard. We've had this property for a while. We were approached by an independent individual to acquire the property. As you know, we don't sell property for speculation. We sell property for development, for AV, for job creation, et cetera. We were approached by Anchor Health Properties LLC for the acquisition. The acquisition price you see in the development agreement is the appraised value. I want to make sure clear for you and the public, this does not finalize the sale. This basically should identify the terms in which we're going to move forward, due diligence periods, et cetera. So when the sale is final and authorized, we'll come back in front of the Board of County Commissioners. Yep.
Gentlemen, any comments? Yeah, I got a question. How soon will we see this new health facility built?
So the due diligence period is it's a while. I mean, it's about 230 days, 270, 230, something like that. But what happens for a project like this, there's site research that needs to take place, and it also involves the entitlement process, which they'll come through our land use process to get it entitled. Obviously, if I'm going to buy a piece of property, I want to make sure I can build what I want to build on it before I acquire the property. So hopefully you'll see ground being cut maybe in about a year, give or take.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Vice Chair, would you please convene as the Board of County Commissioners?
Yes, we will now adjourn as the Development Agency and reconvene as a Board of County Commissioners.
And you'll be meeting as the board for the rest of this meeting. We're continuing with requests for consent agenda. This is for the regular county agenda. We'll start with elected officials, the clerk's office. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Veneta for the digitalization of their city's archival film. The agreement value is $12,000. Funding is through the city of Veneta. No county general funds are involved. County Clerk Catherine McMullen and Records Manager Carol Hopkins. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Vice Chair Scholl and Commissioners. I have my staff here, Carol Hopkins, our Records Manager. Go for it.
Good morning.
So to summarize, Records Management will be digitizing the City of Veneta's archival film. This will help create revenue that will offset allocated costs that are passed on to the county departments. City of Veneta is located just west of Eugene, and we are currently in an IGA agreement with the Multnomah County. Actually, that's where the City of Veneta had heard about our services and were referred to by Multnomah County.
Okay. Comments, gentlemen?
I know exactly where Veneta is. A lot of good memories. Friends still live there.
Carol, your office have a unique capability to digitize these records? We're quite a little ways from Veneta.
Yeah. Yes, we do. We'll actually be having those, the rolls of film delivered to us. We have a machine that is called a Flex Scan, where we can put those old rolls of film on. It digitizes the images, and then we will be putting them up on what's called a FTP site, basically up in a cloud, and indexing those, and then they will be able to take those back off of the cloud and have those digital services, because they are basically running out of room in their little city hall, so.
And Carol, how long will it occupy your staff to complete this task?
It'll be based on job, so it takes about 15 minutes per roll of film. I believe that they have about 180 rolls of film we're going to start with first. So we hope to finish with this task before the end of this fiscal year. And this $12,000 is what they have budgeted each fiscal year. So we'll just keep within their fund perimeters for them.
I see, okay. Gentlemen, any other comments? Okay, thank you very much, Carol.
You're welcome.
And Catherine, for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next,
Today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for your work today.
I voted, Catherine.
Yes, we all voted.
thank you. Next, disaster management, item 1, approval of a corrected amendment number 3 with the City of Portland for UASI 20 funds. The amendment will add $11,000 for building damage assessment trainings. No county general funds are involved. Daniel Nybauer, Director, Disaster Management. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Vice Chair Scholl, Commissioners, Administrator Schmidt. This is just correcting a previously approved Amendment 3, some formatting errors, and a couple changes that weren't carried from Amendment 2 to Amendment 3.
Okay. Comments? How goes the county's relationship with the City of Portland on this urban area security initiative?
It goes well. We're members of the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization and attend those meetings regularly.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Next, Transportation and Development. Item 1, approval of an agreement with the Freshwater Trust for the Henry Creek Culvert Fish Passage Project. The agreement value is not to exceed $100,000. Funding through the County Road Fund. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development. Go ahead, please.
Thank you so much. There's an existing 12-foot diameter culvert that carries Henry Creek under Arlie Mitchell Road in Rhododendron. It's been identified as a barrier to fish passage. We were actually approached by the Freshwater Trust as they wanted to apply for a grant to replace this culvert with a modular bridge of approximately 40 feet in length. The grant, so while our funding is limited to up to $100,000, which is around cash contribution around $25,000, and the rest is in-kind services, so it's our staff kind of supporting and helping and assisting them move forward on this project. This organization was able to secure almost an additional $1 million of funding to basically replace this culvert. So we're here to ask your approval for add this to the consent agenda.
Any comments? No? Good. Well, yeah, thanks. Mr. Johnson, you're busy with fish, potholes, and traffic lights. You must be awfully busy.
Endless opportunities for success. Yes.
All right, item 2, approval of a contract with Dark Horse Construction for the Canby-Markham Highway at Lone Elder Road Intersection Improvements Project. Contract value is $739,927. Funding through Community Road Funds, Transportation System Development Charges, and State House Bill 2017 Safety Funds. No county general funds are involved.
So if you've been out in this area, this intersection is a T intersection, which is stop controlled on Lone Elder, but not stop controlled on the Canby-Markham area, okay? And essentially what is occurring is we are having congestion issues and safety issues from traffic queuing up on the Canby-Markham section. They're taking a left onto Lone Elder. And essentially, this project would widen that road out and add a left turn lane there and additional signage to mitigate the congestion issues that we are facing, and also to improve the safety of the intersection. I can tell you the project was advertised in accordance with ORS and LCRB rules on February 15th. 2023. Proposals were publicly opened March 22nd, 2023. We had 5 proposers. After review of the bids, contracting with Dark Horse Construction was determined to be in the best interest of the county. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Yeah, good. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate
All
it.
right, thank you. Next, Health, Housing, Human Services. Item 1, approval of a subrecipient agreement with the City of Oregon City for ADA ramps and sidewalk improvements. Total value is $432,600 for 1 year, funding through Federal Community Development Block Grant. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services. Go ahead.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. The street improvements will assure ADA compliance is met regarding accessibility for elderly and disabled persons utilizing the intersections and crosswalks in Oregon City.
Questions? Thank you.
All right, item 2, approval of a revenue grant agreement from the Oregon Department of Education for the Healthy Families Oregon Program. Grant amendment decreases the value by $47,293.78 for a new total value of $2,054,736.08 for 2 years, funding through the Oregon Department of Education. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this is somewhat of a housekeeping amendment. Healthy Families is that home visiting program that we have. Part of the money comes from a Medicaid match, and they take a snapshot of who's working on a particular day, and that's the amount that you get funded. So if you're on a day when everybody's working, you do well. If it's a day that you're not working, it's not so well. So what you're seeing here is that when they took the snapshot, they didn't do so well, or as well as they could have done, and so they have to reduce their contract by $47,000. There's no cost to county because what we do is we get less from the state and we give less to the nonprofit who's doing the service. Next quarter, they'll have another shot at ramping it up, and so that's kind of how this funding piece
I see.
goes back and forth.
Okay. Comments? Well, good. Thank you.
Item 3, approval of a revenue amendment from Clackamas Workforce Partnership for Prosperity 10,000 to increase workforce services in Clackamas County. The amendment value is $10,000 for a total value of $159,999 for 1 year, funding through Clackamas Workforce Partnership. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, this one's a little weird because the name of the program is Prosperity 10,000, and we're talking about $10,000. So I'll make that clarification up front. But the Prosperity 10,000 program exceeded enrollment goals and performance metrics early in the program year. So the amendment actually adds funds to our program to increase enrollment goals from 55 to 60 for this fiscal year. So this is a good thing.
Okay. Comments? Good, fine, thank you.
Item 4, approval of a renewal contract with Durgish LLC doing business as Econo Lodge Southeast for on-call hotel rooms for temporary housing or emergency shelter. Contract value is $5,152,500 for 5 years. Funding is through Supportive Housing Services Measure funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this contract would provide up to 27 on-call hotel rooms for temporary housing. While the contract is budgeted for a little over $5.1 million, the county will only pay for rooms actually occupied. The contractor will invoice us on a monthly basis. The rent per night is about $100 per night is what you're paying. And so basically this can be 1 year or it can go up to 5 years if we have the need going into years 2, 3, and 4, that type of thing.
So we're not committed for 5 years?
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Did we negotiate that price down, or is that the same nightly rate?
I haven't been part of that process, but I'm sure that we do some negotiation, because as you know, by them giving us a block of rooms, that's a cost to the business owner. And there's sometimes there are repairs and those type of things that are needed for these types of rooms, so that's part of that pricing. And so there's price points that are a little different than, say, if you or I were to go out and rent it per night, but still at $100 a night. When I go to Eugene, football game, I'm paying $200 a night for far less hotel space. So I think it's a good rate, but.
Okay.
I have a little consternation with this contract.
Okay.
I just visited the Econo Lodge, and I think that this guy has quite the sweetheart deal from the county. that property could be much better maintained. He has way less overhead, and he's guaranteed 100% occupancy rate because we use every room. Some rooms have multiple residents in them. Our staff does a phenomenal job with our nonprofits in running that, so your group is doing, really top-notch work over there. I'm really proud of the progress and work they do. I don't know if I believe that he's been a great partner to the county in how I see the quality of this place being maintained. Little to no overhead, 100%, which no hotel gets 100% guaranteed occupancy rate, even in the best of times. That's rare. And I don't know if this contract should be renegotiated to reflect the value that we bring to him. I don't know, that's my thoughts. I think that we should maybe take a little bit more of a critical look at this contract, maybe take a step back, and maybe have further discussions. We both, I think, benefit from the relationship. We want these rooms and we're utilizing them well, but he really benefits from it financially, the owner. I don't know what this step here is, but I'm not necessarily ready to vote for this on a consent agenda. I would ask that it's pulled and further discussions happen.
Okay. Mr. Cook, I have a couple questions. One, you mentioned, you clarified the price per night. You said it's about $100 a night.
Yes, sir.
But question one is, you mentioned that out of the $5.1 million over 5 years, repair costs come out of that. If that's the case, how is the price of a repair determined? Does it come in as an invoice from the owner of the hotel, or is there some other third-party contractor who says, hey, here's how much it's going to cost to do this repair?
That's a really good question, and that could be part of what we can bring back to you, exactly how the hydraulics of all that works.
Yeah, because I'd be concerned about that, because there is a potential for abuse. If I say the repairs are this much, and there's not a third party to verify the actual cost to do the repairs, that's a question. The other question I have, Mr. Cook, is on the contract with the Econo Lodge. Was there a competitive opportunity for other hotels to be involved in this contract? Now, I know we've had a relationship with the Econo Lodge for a long time, and it's been some benefit to the county, but were other hotel operators given the opportunity to?
I don't recollect in the last year or so any procurements that have gone out to acquire additional motels, because as you know, we were going after purchase. And so now that we're back to
I'm just talking about this per night on-call contract with Econo Lodge.
I don't recall any new procurement that went out for that process. This is an ongoing relationship that we're trying to continue.
Yeah.
Because in our eyes, it's to our benefit. But I understand it's a two-way street, so we could bring that information forward.
Can we?
So they were chosen through a procurement process.
They were, okay. Okay.
Haven't done one recently, but a year or two
yeah.
ago, there was a procurement process.
All
They
right.
applied and they were selected among others.
Okay. Well, shall we hold off on this one? Can we do that without harming the contract with the?
Are you aware, is there a deadline?
I'll work with Gary on deadlines, because what it is we have residents in there now, and so if this is held off too long, we won't
Let
have
us know
that
by
space.
email
But
today,
we will.
perhaps.
The current contract expires June 30th, so we have about
Okay.
6 weeks here.
Okay.
So we can pull it for this week.
Yeah.
You don't have issues next week. We can have about issues on May 30th, a discussion with the board, and we can decide there what you'd like to do going forward.
That'll give you
How's that?
time?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that.
I just want to make it clear, for me, I just want to make sure that not just this hotel, but all of them, that we're negotiating, we're trying to negotiate that price down. I think what might be unique about this hotel is that all the rooms are being rented versus other hotels where only a block of rooms are being rented. So, I remember when I asked the number, what was the average cost per night for the rooms occupied for this particular purpose, was told us $125. There were discussions about maybe negotiating that down, but I can see the uniqueness of dedicating an entire building livelihood, not in the hotel business any longer, renting these rooms out for this particular purpose, that this might be the outlier of the other hotels. So as long as we're negotiating those prices down a little bit, great. If we're securing or locking in a commitment, 10, well, for other hotels, what, 10, 20, 30, I don't know what that looks like, but maybe a spreadsheet might be educational for us, helpful to help us kind of understand what we're doing and where, and the price accordingly.
Okay.
And Rod, I'm also significantly concerned with the repairs and the quality of the properties. Clackamas County is not a slumlord. I'm not saying that that's what this is, but there's human habitation there, and I want there to be a level of dignity and support within the quality of the property and the repairs done for the residents that live there and for the staff that works there. I mean, I can even, when I walked into that little office area that they call an office, and the way even that bathroom looks with tile coming off of it, you can even use part of that bathroom if you wanted to. I mean, it just looked, it was really run down. I think there is a certain level of expectation when we are giving you that much business that he should be like on the spot being a good neighbor and a good partner in this and making sure that there's a certain standard upheld on the property as best as reasonably, that should be reasonably expected. I didn't see that when I was there, and for the money we're paying, I would expect it. So that's one of my big concerns.
Let me take a look at the contract and some of the scope and see if we can add some language around that, because I know we've been out with graffiti and some other things. There was a quick response after we went out, but maybe if we have some of that written in more tightly in the contract, it could help us out, because I agree with you. And also on length, I think we can look at annual as opposed to a 5-year too. That way the board would maybe feel more comfortable in terms of our ability to move out of a situation if we don't either need it anymore or prefer to be there because there's a better option for us.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, one last thing, I appreciate Commissioner West bringing that up, is that, and the reminder that whether it's inside or outside, being this pretty well county funded, that there ought to be some expectation of a certain amount of tidiness and quality, and, it should be a clean property all the way through, inside and out. And I can understand, again, the repairs, so that's got to be factored in, that sometimes these residents don't necessarily take care of the property and they can do some damage. And so that's an understandable overhead cost.
Let me get you some real specificity on that, because I don't want to misspeak or have misspoken in terms of how that piece is handled, but we'll definitely have that clear for you.
And normal wear and tear and things wearing out is different than someone being destructive.
Yes.
But some of the stuff that's been neglected is normal wear and tear as he gets the cash, the check, and we get to be in a property that's not up to par. I believe that could be better, not just for the staff, but for the residents that we're trying to help.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Cook, thank you for more clarification on this in a couple weeks after the budget hearings.
Yes, so we're going to pull item 4 from the consent agenda. We'll come back the soonest will be May 30th, but when you're ready.
Okay.
Thank you, Rod.
All right,
Thank you, Rod. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So thank you, Commissioners. That's the end of the request for consent agenda. All the items except for H3S number 4 will be on this Thursday's business meeting for you to take final action.
Okay, good.
Next, audit review and best practice recommendation. Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director, and our guest from Moss Adams will present. There's a memo in your packet. Elizabeth, please introduce our guest. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners and Vice Chair Shull. I'm Elizabeth Comfort, Finance Director here with the county, and today we have Ashley Austin with,
With Moss Adams.
with Moss Adams LLC. They are our auditors, independent auditors that we contract with, and just recently you approved a new 5-year audit contract with them. Today she is here to do a follow-up with our fiscal year 22 audit.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and good morning, Vice Chair Shull, Commissioners. Happy to be here to go through the results of the audit and give you a high-level overview. So I think you should have some information in your packet. Perfect, great. So I'll go through the agenda quickly. I'll walk through the key team service members that are serving the county, go through the nature of services that we provide as external auditors, go through our auditor opinions and reports, the things that you're most interested in, of course, and then just a high-level overview of the required communications with those charged with governance, which the audit committee is really the ones that we do a detailed dive of those required communications, but as the county commissioners, we also give you a high-level overview as well. On the next slide, your dedicated team. So I served as your engagement reviewer. I'm a partner with Moss Adams, as Elizabeth mentioned, and I'm responsible for signing your audit opinions. So you'll see my personal signature on some of those opinions because Oregon municipal standards require, as an Oregon municipal corporation, that that individual partner that is licensed as a municipal auditor sign your audit opinion. So you will see my personal signature on there. That's the only thing that Moss Adams is responsible for, though, is signing your audit opinion. Everything else is owned by the county. So I'm responsible for overseeing the audit, overseeing the signing of your report. Amanda McCleary-Moore, she's a partner out of our Medford office, and she was responsible for reviewing your financial statements and reviewing a few things in our file that is really designed as a cold review. She picks up the statements. She doesn't have any relationship to anyone at the county. She's very unbiased. She looks at a few things in our file, makes sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. Kevin Muller-Liley is a senior manager out of our Eugene office, and he is responsible for really overseeing the audit from top to bottom. He helps me with some delegated engagement review, supervising staff, those types of things. And then also Harvey Wang is a manager, and he's also out of our Eugene office, and he helps just coordinate the audit and also supervise the staff as well. On to the next slide. So just a little high-level overview over what the nature of the services that we provide to the county. So I'll start in that left top quadrant. So as I mentioned, we just perform the audit of the county and its component units, and we're making sure that the financial statements are in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles or U.S. GAAP. We perform our audit under our professional standards, so generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards because you receive and spend federal funding. In the right top box, we do provide some technical assistance to the county and by way of reviewing those financial statements, making sure that they meet all the technical requirements, bells and whistles of the GFOA requirements, but also of US GAAP, as you would expect. And then we also, the county applies for that GFOA Certificate of Excellence Award, so that's part of our review, is making sure that they meet those requirements as well. In the bottom left, we do some compliance testing over Oregon minimum standards and reporting, which I'll include the results of that in our next slide. And then on the bottom right, the single audit of the county's financial statements. So that's really specific to the federal fund audit piece, and that's still in process. As you know, the county received a lot of federal funding, so we have just been undergoing some of those audit procedures after the main focus was to get the financial statement opinion issued in the middle of April. Okay, so going over to the auditor opinions and reports a couple slides later. So the top of that one is the report of independent auditors. You received an unmodified opinion, which means that your financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. That's what you want to hear, the highest level of assurance that the county can receive a clean opinion. So that's kudos to management. It takes me all of 5 seconds to say it, and it takes all year for them to make sure that the controls are at a spot where it will catch, material errors, and the adjustments are posted appropriately. So that's kudos to management. The second one on that list is the report of independent auditors required by Oregon state regulations. That's really specific to the Oregon minimum standards. Things like, did you adopt your budget appropriately? Are your procurement policies appropriate? Are you following them appropriately? There's a lot of specific things in Oregon minimum standards that you must follow. We audit all of those requirements and make sure that you are doing all of those things. If you had any sort of budget over expenditure, or you didn't adopt your budget on time, or if there were any compliance issues that we identified as a result of those audit procedures, they would be listed in this report and on this slide. But there were no control findings and no compliance findings that we identified as a result of our procedures. The final item on that list is our financial statement opinion in accordance with government auditing standards over financial reporting and compliance. And you'll see that that was also a clean opinion, no control findings and no compliance findings. And just a high-level overview here of the communications with those charged with governance. As I mentioned, we go through a very detailed overview of the audit and all of our required communications with the audit committee. This is really just designed as a high-level overview. The first item on that slide is really the timing of the audit. So we did issue our audit report on April 10th, 2023, and that was submitted to the state ahead of the extended filing due date of April 14th, 2023, so made it just in time. We are also required to share if there were any audit adjustments. So just as a general reminder, there are two types of audit adjustments. An audit adjustment, well, really three types. There's an audit adjustment that we identify that management either has to post because they can't receive a clean opinion unless they do post it, it's that material, or they just choose to post it because they want their books and records to be clean. Neither of those were identified this year. The other type is an uncorrected audit adjustment, which you will see listed on this slide. An uncorrected audit adjustment is one that we identify that's over our findings threshold. It's not considered material to the county's financial statements, and management says, you know what, that's great, that we're going to pass on posting that, either because it was identified pretty late in the process or because it's just a lot of work to update the information in the financial statements, or it's immaterial. And in all three cases, it's this particular item, even though you can see the dollar amount is high, but it's immaterial to the county's financial statements as a whole. If you think about the overall county's financial statements, it is considered immaterial. So the one uncorrected audit adjustment, some of your investments were not reported at fair value at the end of the year. There was a large unrealized loss at the end of June 30, 2022, which you may remember because inflation was continuing to go up and investments were continuing to go down, and you're required to mark those to market at the end of the year. And had the county posted the adjustment, unrealized earnings and miscellaneous expense would decrease in the governmental activities bucket by about $7.7 million and business type activities by $1.6 million, which just reflects where the investments were held, either governmental activities or business type activities. In terms of difficulties encountered in performing our audit, there were no difficulties. This would be if we didn't get access to individuals that we wanted to talk to, if we didn't receive paper information or documentation or supporting evidence that we had asked for. No difficulties arose during the audit this year, and no disagreements with management about an accounting or auditing matter that would be required to be shared with you. The next slide is really getting at any deficiencies in internal control. And these would be items, we would be required to tell you if there were any sort of material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. These would be items where a key control failed and a large adjustment was identified. None of those this year. The one item that you see there is really related to the uncorrected audit adjustment. As you might expect, if you have an uncorrected audit adjustment, typically there's a best practice recommendation to go along with it because there was something that went awry in order for that to be identified. So the recommendation here is during our review of there's quite a few work papers related to cash and investments. Treasury completes a portion of that work paper, and then they send it over to Finance, and Finance completes the rest of it. And Treasury had completed the work paper quite a bit earlier in the process and then provided it to Finance. And when we got it as auditors, we identified this $9 million adjustment, or a reconciling item rather, that wasn't explained. We didn't know what it was. So it took some communication between both Treasury and Finance to really identify, okay, this is the unrealized loss on the investment portfolio that should have been identified. So the recommendation is Treasury and Finance should work a little bit more hand in hand when that reconciliation is completed, so that those are identified and called out in those reconciliation work papers ahead of time before providing to the auditors. I want to give Elizabeth a chance to comment on that. I think she wanted to provide a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. So yes, we are working closely, improving our consistent communication with the Treasury Department. Brian and I are meeting weekly to establish just a protocol of any issues that come up and timely. I mentioned to him that we share, or we have a weekly audit check-in meeting, and I've invited him to join and his team for the next audit period, because I think it'll behoove all of us to work very closely together to share timely communication. So I'm excited for our next year process and as we move through the next year's audit.
That is all the materials I had prepared for today. So my contact information is on the last slide if you have questions that come up, after I leave today, but I'll open it up for questions right now.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. Gentlemen, questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. So the page where it says communications with those charged with governance, can you give me a idea of what that entailed this year, or this audit, or last year?
The communications with those charged with governance, I think I mentioned already, would technically be with the audit committee, which we have not met with the audit committee yet because we have not completed all of the audit-related items. So our single audit, the county's single audit is still outstanding. We're still performing procedures, expect to issue by the end of the month. And then at that point, an audit committee meeting will be scheduled, and we'll go through those required communications with those charged with governance, which would include our plan, scope, and timing of the audit in terms of if we had to adjust the plan or the timing of the audit, if there were any disagreements, any policies that were adopted during the year. During 2022, GASB 87 was adopted. There was some additional work related to that. It goes through the sort of nitty-gritty information that the county commissioners don't necessarily need to know.
Okay, in my 20-plus years of being in public service as an elected person and dealing with annual audits, historically, and even with Moss Adams and here at the county, there's been outreach typically, not this time, with every elected member of the board, typically. And what you're saying now, you're referencing the audit committee, which is a minority of the board. Is that a changed practice now? Are we no longer reaching out to each of the electeds in the county?
I don't think it's a change in practice, Commissioner Savas. I think it's just sometimes our audit procedures would call for us to meet with you specifically or meet with any elected official on the county commission. We are not required to meet with you, but if you would like us to meet with you going forward, we would be happy to do so.
Well, the purpose has typically been, or the questions have typically been, we have a new commissioner here today who wasn't here last year. Usually it's, have you identified any things or anything of concern to you as an elected official? What do you suggest we look at, that type of thing? So that's been the nature of it for the last 20 years, essentially, to simplify that. But we do have an internal auditor. We do have an internal audit committee, and they have done audits of different departments as they see fit. And there's been some findings. And so how do you factor, the challenge has been for me and for the public is, they hear this presentation, they see there's no audit findings, they assume, I think it's a great assumption, that everything we're doing is perfect, pretty much, right? And we have a clean audit. But operationally, sometimes what we're doing may or may not be efficient, it could be some errors, mistakes, so forth, that don't come up to the threshold of your report. So when we see some of those internal audits per operational, maybe it's a subcontractor, whatever it may be, a district, where there might be some findings that are kind of concerning. How does Moss Adams or your role with the county, do you look for that? And when you do find something, let's say one of our districts, we had a pretty substantial concerning audit, internal audit. How do you factor that in? How does that come? Does that bubble up into this report? It apparently does not.
We include that as part of our risk assessment. We meet with the internal auditor on an annual basis to talk to her about the risk that she is assessing and the projects that she's encompassed during the year and what the results of those projects were and results of those audits were. And then we include that in our risk assessment, and that may dictate a lower materiality threshold. That may dictate that we spend more time on a specific area. That may mean that we ask more questions of individuals throughout the organization. But no, it's not included in this report, as our opinion is really on those financial statements and if they're in accordance with U.S. generally accepted accounting principles. If there was fraud, waste, or abuse significant enough to be reported, it would be included in this report.
Okay. Are you familiar with the audit findings of the internal auditor?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Savas. Commissioner West, do you have any questions?
Ms. Austin, is that Austin? I say it right?
It's Austin, like
Austin?
Texas, but it is mispronounced quite often. It's okay.
I apologize. Thank you
No
for
worries.
your time this morning. I'm the new commissioner. I'm the new kid on the block, so some of my questions might be quite basic, but please indulge me just so I get a better understanding of what you do. Can you explain to me a little bit about the best practices by which standards you're measuring up against? So I think you mentioned something where you said something like the minimum standards of the state of Oregon's requirement. And then, so my question is like, what is that specifically? And is there a best practice that is higher than that should be maybe looked at as a different standard? Is the Oregon minimum standard maybe by law and statute sufficient, but is there a better standard than that makes us more excellent than the minimum of Oregon standards? And so I'm trying to understand, like, what's the best measurement or goal for us to achieve within the audit compliance work? I don't know if that's a clear question, but that's kind of what yeah.
No, that's a great question. So there's, I think, two facets to your question. So the first is Oregon minimum standards. That's governed by Oregon, the ORSs. And so we are specifically auditing to, did you follow the rules and regulations? And we do not offer best practice recommendations typically for those. It's either you fail it or you pass it. It's a pass-fail test that is included in that one opinion over Oregon state regulations. The best practice recommendations that we included in the latter portion of the presentation, specific to the investment and cash work paper reconciliation, that is things that we identify as part of our audit procedures that we feel like there is an opportunity to strengthen internal controls, and we work with various counties throughout the state, various governmental agencies throughout the state, and see various practices that happen at those agencies, and so are using both our historical knowledge of kind of that information that we've gathered over the course of audits of other organizations, but also are you, Clackamas County, following your own policies and procedures? And if you're not, then that's also an opportunity for a best practice recommendation as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I have another probably basic question,
Sure.
maybe for listeners that may not be from the audit world. I know in my medical practice, if I start using medical lingo, patients sometimes gloss over and they're like, I don't know what is Nurse Ben talking about? So I'm going to ask you as if, I guess I'm your patient today. So can you explain what a material finding means, and then why is that significant? And can you parse that out and explain that further?
Yeah, our professional standards dictate that if there's a significant dollar amount that's over our we use professional judgment to set a materiality threshold. Of course, we can't audit every single dollar or every single transaction. You don't want to pay us for that, and quite frankly, we'd be here all year if you did do that. So we have to set a materiality threshold, and that's over the whole financial statements as a whole. And then using that threshold, we bifurcate it and use it for testing specific areas of the financial statements. Cash has a separate threshold than, say, property, plant, and equipment. It differs depending on financial statement line item, inherent risk, and just in general what we're expecting to see. A material weakness would be identified if there was a significant lapse in internal control where there could have been, or there was, a large adjustment that was identified that we identified as auditors that the county had not identified. And that really gets back to, well, what were the controls in place, and why did that control lapse? And there is likely going to be other adjustments that also squeak through there that would not be caught if that error is not corrected. And so that would be a material weakness. Significant deficiency is not material, but significant enough to both the users of your financial statements as well as the county commissioners to be aware of.
And then I guess my last question, and this might, Ms. Comfort, this also might be for you. I'm not sure. Have we, just historically, because I wasn't here, have we had a history of having significant material findings or any material findings? And is it unusual for you to actually find those, so it's a bigger deal when you do find them? And have we seen improvement with or consistency within our audit outcomes as a county?
I don't recall that you've had material weaknesses or significant deficiencies over the last few years, but I'd have to go refresh my memory. I know there have been some significant deficiencies in the component unit levels and the component units that roll up into the county, but those don't get reported because the materiality threshold for the component units are much lower than at the county threshold. So but in terms of just the financial statements as a whole, I think in the last couple of years, no. But the single audit is different. The single audit has a different materiality thresholds. We have to look into anything that's over 50 cents if there's an error. It's very much compliance driven. And so generally, if you're looking at a governmental's financial statements, you're more apt to see findings on the federal funds, the single audit side, than you are on the, I mean, you could see findings on the financial statement side too, but I think that may be where some of the county's significant deficiencies that I'm recalling have occurred in, but that was a few years ago now. Do you remember? Do you recall?
We had a cluster with the Water Environment
Oh, the
Services.
Water Environment Services. There was a bucket of funding that had been missed in a prior year that did lead to a material weakness for WES's financial statements in general. And sometimes that happens, things happen and slip through the cracks, and unfortunately, we are just the ones that have to report what happens as a result.
That's why we have audits.
Exactly.
I appreciate you walking me through that. Thank you for your time.
Commissioners, if I may, so this is the first year in at least 15 years we've had no over expenditures by a department. That's where a department inadvertently overspends their budget, not on purpose, accidentally. This is the first time in 15 years there's zero. There's always been at least one or two. That's a humongous accomplishment.
Yeah.
Well done.
Very good. Ashley, on the single audit of the county's federal grant programs, what kind of visibility do you have down to the nonprofits that receive these funds?
That would just be the subrecipient monitoring that you are required to do. And the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, sorry, I was trying to think of what it stood for. The Office of Management and Budget comes out with a compliance supplement every single year for us as auditors to use. And so for each assistance listing number or ALN number that you receive funding under, there are specific compliance requirements that the government or that specific agency wants us as auditors to focus on. So just because subrecipient monitoring, because you give funding to a nonprofit, that may not be considered important to the agency, and we may not test it. We are only required to test what's included in that compliance supplement as direct and material compliance requirements, as they're called, which things are like allowable costs, subrecipient monitoring, eligibility, I can't think of, or procurement is one of them, but things like that where the agency is saying, I only care about these 6 items. So sometimes, for example, in your question, you're saying how much visibility do we have as auditors in funding that you pass through to nonprofits? Well, if it's not included as a direct and material compliance requirement, we're not going to look at it. However, if it is included, then we're going to look at the county's overall process for monitoring those subrecipients. What are they doing? Are they risk assessing those subrecipients appropriately? If there are findings in those nonprofits' financial statement audits, are they issuing a corrective action plan? Are they doing additional work? Are they performing additional audits of those nonprofits? And we would, of course, report on that if they weren't doing that.
Okay, thank you. And since this is still ongoing on the federal grants programs, when can we expect to hear from Moss Adams on the completion of that?
I think Elizabeth will schedule another meeting with the county commissioners where I can come back and discuss the results of that with you.
A month, 2 months?
In June.
In
We're
June.
looking to wrap
Okay.
up the single audit at the
Okay,
end of this
good,
month.
thank you. And on the uncorrected audit adjustment issue, Elizabeth, has that been corrected? I mean, the situation that caused that, has that been corrected? We're talking about the $7.7 million and $1.6 million. the one uncorrected audit adjustment on your report
Well,
here?
it was not corrected. The county deemed it immaterial, as did we, so they did not correct it. However, I do think Elizabeth mentioned that she's meeting with Brian on a regular basis
Yeah,
and the treasurer's office in order to increase communication.
Got it, okay. And Elizabeth, the county treasurer agrees with that action?
Yeah, let me explain a little bit more on that particular correction. So that is at the end of the year, how we record the fair market value. So it'll be corrected for June 30 of '23. So it's not a during the year correction, it's how we present our investments at the end of the year. And yes, we are working together with Brian so that we get the timely communication and recording, and that Treasury and Finance agree on the presentation for the investments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner West, do you have another question?
I do not.
Oh, you
I
don't?
just never turned it off.
Okay. Okay, well, Ashley, well, thank you, and pass our thanks on to Amanda, Kevin, and Harvey for your work on this. It's most appreciated.
Thank you very much.
If I may, Commissioner Savis made a comment. Ashley, it was your predecessor, I think his name was Jim, is that his name? Jim did have a meeting with each county commissioner and the administrator prior to the kickoff to the audit. Maybe that's something, we did not purposely end that, Commissioner, but maybe as a practice, we can restart that, please.
Yeah, that would be great.
Great. And I want to thank Elizabeth, you and your staff, Joseph and Patrick, and all your staff for your fine work supporting Moss Adams in the audit, too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right, next, legislative update. Trent Wilson from Public and Government Affairs. There is a specific item, there was a memo in your packet to address today, and other items Trent may wish to bring up. Go ahead, Trent.
Thank you, Administrator Schmidt, and good morning, Vice Chair Mark Schull and Commissioners. I am here today with, yes, a specific bill. It's SB 1044. This is a priority bill for Governor Kotek to fund behavior and mental health programs, a little bit above and beyond what would normally be the agency budgets. It's a priority bill for Governor Kotek, and she's requested that we actively support this bill. What I would add is that this type of work is already sort of covered in our legislative agenda, and so we're talking with you today because it has that direct request, and we wanted to give it that direct attention. We've worked with H3S and agree and determine that this funding would have direct benefits to Clackamas County, so it passes that test for us, and it would not interfere with other priorities of Clackamas County, AKA the courthouse, for other legislative priorities. And so wanted to bring this to your attention. The only thing that we would add is if we do support this bill, that we sort of encourage some fair and equitable distribution of these funds into Clackamas County. Historically, funds like this get turned into sort of a competitive request for proposals. Can you spend these dollars better, the best? And so it gets competitive, and that makes it hard for everybody to do, robust services throughout the state. So we would be requesting that be communicated or added to the bill in some fashionable way, but we can still be supportive and request for those additions. That's my update and requesting your direction.
Okay, Commissioner West, you have a question?
Yeah, just a little bit of background. This all started when Commissioner Savis and I had a meeting with the governor's office a couple weeks ago, I don't know, a month ago or so. It's all blurring together. The timelines are moving really quickly here. And we were specifically, we were trying to figure out how to collaborate with one another between Clackamas County and the governor's office to be effective in how we address homelessness, addiction, and mental health issues. We very much expressed our desire to be treatment-focused and focus on recovery-oriented systems of care. As our resolution states, the governor's office was very receptive to the message that we were conveying and advocating for. And then so they sent a letter of support, which is on public record from a few weeks ago. After that meeting, I responded back with another letter to the governor emphasizing, let's try to find some funding. Where can you help us? And then this ask came from the governor's response to my last letter to her office. And so I guess I'm hopeful if the Senate gets back to work and gets back into session, I'm hopeful that some of this money very much could go towards helping with some type of recovery center, campus, or recovery-oriented systems of care to help people that are struggling with those diseases of addiction specifically, and dealing with some of those gaps within the care continuum. And I think some of this is really smart. We always wish it was more, but I think specifically the $15 million for substance abuse disorders and recovery centers is potentially helpful and speaks to what we want to prioritize. And there's some other monies in here as well. So I hope that this board does get behind the governor's ask on Senate Bill 1044. I think it's good government. And then my other question is if we respond back to the governor, can we talk about maybe Clackamas County getting additional access to opioid dollars or other additional fundings that are available? What other pots potentially are available that the governor could help advocate for to help get recovery centers or recovery campus or something to do with those priorities that we have stated off the ground? So maybe looking a little bit in our response back to the governor, beyond just the Senate bill, but what other pots would she be willing to help advocate and help within the metro area to get these types of services off the ground? That's my ask, and then that's just a little bit of history, as I think you knew that already, Commissioner Savas, because you were a part of that too, and helping get that dialogue going between us and the governor's office. So that has continued, and so which I'm very thankful for. So that's kind of my thoughts around this.
Good. Thank you very much, Commissioner West. Commissioner Savas, Commissioner Schrader, any comments on SB 1044?
Yeah.
Sounds like it's been covered for me, but.
Yeah, I just want to ask the question. I don't know, I don't see the total here, but it looks like it might be around $65 million approximately, plus or minus, I'm just guessing. Is that going to be spread out, divided proportionally by population, or is it going to be, how's that going to be distributed?
Thank you, Commissioner Savas. That speaks to what I was trying to communicate a minute ago, which is that the bill is a little silent on how these funds would be distributed. And when it's silent, historically, it's money is available, and to distribute it, counties and other providers do requests for proposals to receive those funds. So it's historically been a competitive process to go get those dollars, which has been challenging. It's less equitable. It's less fair. You don't know who's going to win. Some people get less, some people get more. So what we would be adding to our support is a request that this be distributed in a more fair and equitable way, so that it's, all a rising tide lifts all boats sort of approach.
So I'm just kind of, I just have a question here. I won't say it's rhetorical, but I don't think you can answer it per se as well. But I'd certainly like to have better definition to understand if, let's just say that, somewhat to Commissioner West's points that he made, if there is a lack of a facility to treat people with mental health, we may not be eligible for the dollars. So is a place or a center, having one of those beneficial, or are you more likely to receive some of those dollars possibly? Again, I don't expect you to answer that, but that'd be the question I would have. Like, absent a facility, maybe you're not going to get the dollars, right? Maybe you have a program, but if the program needs placement or you don't have capacity, then how do you weave that in? How are those decisions made? So while I would like to, we are supporting the bill apparently, I would like to have some better definition about what that looks like for us. What do we need to do to prepare for it? Maybe we can do something proactively to ready ourselves to be eligible for these dollars.
It is my understanding that some of these dollars can go towards sticks and bricks. So maybe if we had a property that we've already designated as where we want to do our recovery center and it just needs rehabbing, and we already have it identified and we're ready to go the moment we have the money, maybe that shows shovel readiness. But it is my understanding that some of this money absolutely can go towards capital, which is that type of, property capital, which I think is unique, because often we get a lot of money for programming, but we don't have the infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if that gets a little bit to what you were saying, Commissioner Savas.
Well, it does a little bit. And again, another question that you can research out, or maybe unless you have the answer, I'm presuming this is one-time money, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Or
So
at
it's
least
one-time
within the
money.
biennium.
What is the range of years in which it can be pulled from? Is it a two-year, 3-year bill program where you have some time? Because if it's sticks and bricks, that takes, if you just start from ground zero,
Yeah.
It might be 3 to 5 years, and I don't know what the timeline is for these dollars to be expended.
So the dollars will probably need to be issued within the next 2 years, so within the biennium. And usually with those sort of bonded programs or programs that come with that sort of state funding, if it's not a bond, like if it's just like direct allocation from, say, the general fund, there usually isn't like a timeline on the back end of that. It's like you've received these funds because you've been approved for a competitive application, or you've been approved through a distribution formula. If it is a bond, we'll need to show some sort of like capital timeline, project manager, an event that says like once these dollars are bonded, that we are able to deliver on those funds responsibly over the course of those funds. So 2 different paths depending on, and I don't know for sure if these are general fund bond dollars or going to be bonded funds, but that's how that would work depending on the flavor of the money.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll just close with, sometimes there are other agencies, counties in particular I'm talking about, maybe even a city or two, that might actually have something in mind, lobby for these, for a bill like this, and then they're already set up or poised to receive the funding because they have taken the steps. I just don't know what our readiness is or our proactive status is, and if we've been part of it. Is there something in there that we are cognizant of, and we're preparing for, in particular, of all these different bulleted items here? Again, you can't answer that today, I get that, but I'd love to have more detail on that, if it's available.
Thank you. I mean, I think with regards to the CHP funds, we are a CMHP provider. And so I think we have good access to those opportunities that are built within this bill. But the correspondence between Commissioner West and the governor's office has been like, we would like money in this direction, and her response was, great, here's an opportunity to make sure that there's money available, is this bill right here. And so this is that opportunity to create money in this direction. I think that this ongoing correspondence is a healthy way to be ready for those funds, and we can start working with H3S and the team to figure out if these monies were approved, what are some opportunities that we have to engage with them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Trent. How can we get ready, look appealing, and do our job that when this bill hopefully passes and is funded, that we're in the position for her to say, yep, you guys have been great partners in this. Good job, Clackamas County, and thank you for helping me get this over the finish line. How do we really become good partners with the governor's office on this? The dialogue's actually been quite refreshing and good and we haven't always agreed, and there's been a little bit of, give and take here, but it's been good dialogue on how to help us from a local level. And so I hope it continues. But I hope that, and a lot of this is the Senate going to get back to being the Senate, right? There's a lot of stuff in the air right now, so that's a new dynamic to this. We may not get there this session period. So,
Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, so my understanding is we've even been looking at potential property at this point.
Been, yes.
Yeah, so we could be prepared for something like this.
I'm hopeful.
And so where is this? Well, obviously, everything's held up right now because nobody's in the Senate. So what happens if, they don't show up again? Then none of these bills go forward. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So pretty much, we have no idea. We have no idea how.
Things are different this year. Obviously, there was a measure passed, statewide that said that's trying to hold state legislators to be accountable to showing up and being on the floor. And so this is a little bit of a new dynamic. It's unclear how this current delay is going to unpack, but there are continued negotiations. We know that some of the senators have already passed that threshold that was set up by the measure, so they will not be able to run for re-election, in the future. So as more of those become available, it becomes more unclear, I think, what that could look like. That doesn't mean they can't come back and finish the session, and just my expectation is that this is the budget bill for the state for the next 2 years. They will have to pass a budget, whether it's in this state legislative session or a special session or some sort of emergency declaration by the governor. So there's a few dominoes that could tick over, but it could get awkward. And there's still 2 months left, or a month and a half of session.
Yes, Trent, I have a question here similar to what Commissioner Savas was asking about. I'd be interested to know from our H3S mental health professionals are there any existing assets, facilities out there that we could partner with some of this money to increase the number of Clackamas County patients that they're seeing? Something to think about. No, don't need an answer now, but as we look at this, that would be something that I'd be curious about. And then finally, Trent, do you need a letter from the board to the governor on this one?
The great thing about something that's already approved by you for the legislative session is there's a letter writing policy that we can pursue for this particular bill. As it relates to additional correspondence with the governor, that's been so far with Commissioner West, and I think Commissioner Savage was part of some of that too. So we can talk about the right approach for that and work internally with administration and you to figure that out.
Administrator Schmidt, you had an idea?
Today is a motion
Okay.
to support this bill, if you choose to do that.
Okay, can I have
Vice
a-
Chair, I
yeah.
move that the Board of Clackamas County Commissioners supports the governor's request of Senate Bill 1044 relating to behavioral health and additional funding from the state.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to support Senate Bill 1044. Are there any more comments?
Also, one more, I don't, if we were to work with your office to respond back to the governor, should that just be between, like, because it has been historically at this point, myself and Commissioner Savas. I don't know if Commissioner Savas would be willing to sign on additional letters and correspondence back and forth to the governor on this specific issue as we relate back and forth, or how does the board want to handle continued communication with the office?
At this point, it should be a board letter, because you're involving the whole board, so we can bring that back later for you to write a formal letter. Right now, Trent just needs to know what your position is. You're about to vote on that.
Right, okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
Clerk, could you call the poll, please?
Commissioner Savas.
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader.
Aye.
Commissioner West.
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl.
Aye, the motion passes 4-0. Thank you very much.
So Trent, will you please work offline with staff on a potential letter to the governor addressing the board's support, but also the things Commissioner West discussed moving forward?
This is
Absolutely.
really
Thank you very much.
fantastic.
I'm excited.
Good work, you guys. This is great stuff.
Do you have any other items, Trent?
I have no additional updates.
Thank you, Trent, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great. Next item, disaster debris support to cities and special districts. There's a memo in your packet. Daniel Nybauer, Director, Disaster Management, will present. Go ahead, please.
Hello again, Board. Daniel Nybauer, Interim Director of Disaster Management. In June 2020 and June 2021, the county got 5-year on-call contracts for debris removal and debris monitoring. So following a disaster, we can give these consultants and contractors a call, and they will come and help with cleanup. And it is what FEMA asks us to do, and it makes us more eligible for FEMA reimbursement. It helps us clean up public property and right-of-way much faster than we can. Right now, the contract is set up so that can be done in unincorporated Clackamas County. The contract allows for the contractor to work on the cities, but we don't have a relationship with the cities, special districts, service districts, or any other public agencies that would be eligible to use it. And we would like to pursue signing with any agency within Clackamas County that would want to, so they can do it, so that community members wouldn't be driving down a street in Clackamas County and hit a city border and not be able to go any further. And this allows the cities then to clean up. The whole county will be able to move forward and get cleaned up. And FEMA recently has been providing a higher percentage reimbursement if debris is cleaned up faster throughout the county. So it is also an incentive for us to get cities on board. And we have all this relationship done ahead of time. It makes it much easier than us trying to figure it out in the moment. So we would like to pursue signing on cities and special districts to an IGA so we can work as a whole county.
Okay, Daniel. Commissioners, any questions for Daniel? Daniel, I have a question. On this, in your documents here, I didn't see anything on how this would be billed out. Is there a price per ton? How do you make that work?
All those rates are established for that. The debris monitoring contract is a time and materials, and so those are the individuals who go to make sure that the contractors removing the debris are actually removing eligible debris from the correct areas. The debris removal contracts are based on equipment types that are out there, and then generally per ton or per yard of debris.
Okay. So this morning, Daniel, what do you need from us on this?
Approval to pursue these
You don't need
IGAs.
a motion, you just need a thumbs up.
Motion, thumbs up, then we'll come back to you at a business meeting for the formal IGA
Okay.
approval.
Commissioners, are we in agreement to support this? Yeah, okay. Looks like you have 4 yeses, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next, naming of the new transportation maintenance facility. There's a memo in your packet. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, will present.
I already have the name.
Oh, no.
It just totally came to me.
Well, well, it dawned on me when Commissioner Scholl referenced the new transportation maintenance building as Dan's new transportation maintenance building, and we should probably figure out a name for this. So we are here to have a discussion with the board.
Actually, I'm okay with
So
that.
we are, memorial, you know, so I know. We're getting very close to closing on the new transportation maintenance facility, which is great news. We're expecting to close by the end of this month or early next, with the move scheduled to begin the first week of June. Take between 30 and 60 days to get that move complete, probably closer to the 30-day timeline. But we have to name the facility. And so a couple things, just to educate. We haven't named a new building in a while. I haven't. I've been here 30 years and never named a building. But there's a naming policy that was a part of your materials. And that gives the board some latitude and establishes some criteria should they wish to name a facility. It gives them the ability either one, just approve it, or two, you have the ability to stand up an ad hoc committee, which in all honesty is probably more around like naming facilities after individuals, things of that nature, memorializing them on the facility. There's a couple things just to enlighten you on. One, there's two things we took into consideration, one of which is we do have two buildings down in Abernathy that are currently named after individuals who lost their life while working at Clackamas County on the job. And we feel it is important to continue to memorialize them, but we are working with facilities to find different ways to memorialize them at the new facility. We're looking at bronze wall mounts or something like that, some other way, but that's to be determined. We're going to talk to staff about that a little bit more. And also, we felt that it was important to look at kind of the naming conventions that are up here at the campus. So if you think about that, we've got the Public Services Building, which we're in here. We've got the Development Services Building, which is across the courtyard. And we also felt that it was important to be clear with the public on what the purpose of the building was, what was the primary purpose of that facility. And so we thought about a couple of different names for consideration. And essentially, this is a very creative name that we're recommending to you today. Basically, it's the Clackamas County's Transportation Service Building. So there's two asks. One is for the board's authorization to kind of forego the ad hoc committee route, and then secondly, to authorize naming the facility the Transportation Services Building. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Comments? Commissioner West?
Initially, my thoughts were definitely the Dan Johnson Service Transportation of Clackamas County Building of Greatness or whatever. No, but and I also thought of like it's an opportunity to maybe highlight somebody special within Clackamas County's history. It could be, I think it could be somebody that maybe that maybe references somebody from our Native American history in this region, or taking an opportunity, somebody that maybe would be a nice historical figure to make sure that was significant in the county's history, to make sure and to recognize that way. I don't know. We could go the easy route and go the generic governmental name, but it would be cool to maybe, in such a significant and cool investment, to I don't know, like, wasn't one of the Boones, we have some Boone's history here from that family, the Daniel Boone's family, and the ferry crossing. They're about transportation. I don't know. There's a lot of different people. There's, I don't know. It'd be cool to maybe open up the possibility of discussing somebody like that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, we're in a point in time in which things like this, namings of facilities or parks or whatever they may be, comes under scrutiny often and we've actually had somewhere where a name got proffered in a certain way and then it was, it was criticized because it maybe didn't involve this particular group of people, and it was, so on and so forth. So I would be cautious, and I think the only way to be cautious might really, frankly, be not the easy path, but to form a committee, frankly, to talk about how we go about the process. I don't want to see it be a burdensome or a, heavily populated committee. But I think under the days and times we live under and some recent issues with namings, and I think it might be wise, frankly, to be more considerate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Schrader.
Oh, I don't know, I want to name it after Dan Johnson, but this is me. The Dan Johnson Clackamas County Transportation Service Building.
The committee probably would agree.
Yeah. Well, then and I don't know, how do we get some other people? Well, Dan and your second in command as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the policy, though, I want to make sure, well, let's back up. You have the ability at any given time to go through a process to name any given building differently. Okay, I want to make sure we're clear about that. So this doesn't limit any opportunities there. Secondly, so the policy's clear. I mean, the policy says basically the board would stand up an ad hoc committee. It would include one member of the Board of County Commissioners, the county administrator or his designee, a member of an appropriate city council, so we'd have somebody from Oregon City in there, one citizen at large, and one member of the appropriate planning organization or neighborhood association. So we'd have to stand that committee up. There's a public comment period for the BCC and or the ad hoc committee to consider comments on all the nominations. And there's like a 30-day period for public comment to be taken. Okay. So it's not a lengthy process. I mean, it's not a year-long process, but we need some clarity from the board if there's a desire to go down that path, and there's consensus from the board on the desire to go down that path, and then have the board inform us who that representative would be.
Okay. Administrator Schmidt, you are next.
I recommend you stick to the staff recommendation, and here's why. So this building is not open to the public. It's staff only. It's facilities for our staff, so the public will not be accessing this building. The Transportation Services Building very aligns, as Dan said, with the current building names on these campuses, the DSB, PSB, now the TSB. I suggest you send your energies on naming the new courthouse. That's much more important than this building that will only be a facilities building for our staff. That's my recommendation to you. It's your decision, of course, but seeking your guidance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Savas.
Well, I was going to ask for Gary's input, but we just got it. But just one thing, Gary, I see your point about, okay, it's not a public place, but these two are, right? DSB is, and PSB is, obviously. We have a lot of public in and out. I'm not suggesting we rename these buildings, but, at the same token as, that's not exactly on the same playing field, if you will. I'll just leave it there. I don't have any preconceived ideas. I just really want us to be cautious. We have a lot of buildings out there, right? We have buildings that we lease. We have buildings that, are more significant. Perhaps tomorrow we're approving to construct 2 more. We'll go through a naming process as well. So I don't have any heartburn. Whatever we all agree with, I just want to be cautious because I know that there are sensitivities. I don't know if there's any unique aspects to the land in that area, anything historic or something like that. Perhaps not. But I think those are things that at least ought to be considered or explored, unless you already have, Dan. Dan, have you already done any exploration of the historic aspects of the land there?
I haven't researched the history. I've kind of tried to be as hands-off as we could, based on the components of the agreement we have. And generally, it's general area farmland that was been redeveloped with a creek beside it. So, and some BPA lines near it. So that's not a history that, in my mind, garners. Maybe it's the power transportation building. I don't know, but we can do research around that if it's a board intents to kind of do a deeper dive into that.
Okay, Commissioner West.
I was ready to make a motion, but it looks like I don't want to
Now,
stop.
hold off, we have somebody else. And I have some comments to make, Commissioner West.
Yeah, I just want to say, in every building that we build here, you'll notice there is a plaque for all the sitting commissioners that were here, plus the administrators. So even on that building, you'll have that.
Correct.
As well. And it wouldn't be a bad idea to include the directors of the, you don't have to name the building, but there is a way you can, let people know it was in the year when you were here. So that's just another suggestion. You can call it the Clackamas County Transportation Service Building, but then you put the year and the names of the people.
An acknowledgement of the board and the city,
Yep.
county administrator, et cetera, yes. Yep, that we plan to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I would support the Clackamas County Transportation Services Building. It's clear what it is to the public. They might not go there, but it's clear what it is. And I would encourage you to, lay out your interior to look at an area where you could use a plaque to commemorate people like Mike McCoy or Grady Waxenfelter, so people will remember their devotion and dedication to the county. And also, I support this Clackamas County Transportation Services Building because sometimes in the next 60 days, you're going to have a grand opening, and you need a name by then. And so I don't know what you want, what we need to do today. We certainly can't decide on it today, but that's my recommendation. Administrator Schmidt, what do you think?
If you agree on the staff recommendation, you can make a motion today and you're done. If you want to form a committee, then just direct me to do
Okay.
that.
Again, I think on the committee issue, we got a lot going on. Again, I encourage my fellow commissioners to support Clackamas County Transportation Services Building, and we'll get this done today. Can I have a motion?
Vice Chair, I move that the board forego the formation of the aforementioned committee and propose naming the facility the Clackamas County Transportation Service Building.
Okay, we got a motion.
With a bus, I'm just kidding.
We have a motion from Commissioner West. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Motion from Commissioner West, second from Commissioner Schrader, to name the new transportation maintenance facility, the Clackamas County Transportation Services Building. Any more comments?
So no bust of Dan Johnson,
No.
like a little bronze, like with a smirky smile and a.
And we do have Zinser Hall somewhere.
Clerk to the
I don't
board,
see why-
clerk to the board, will you please call the poll?
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Vice Chair Scholl.
Aye. Motion passes 4-0. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you so much.
And I look forward to opening ceremony at the new facility.
We will too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I thought it was going to be old blue or new blue, but
All right, next, business meeting agenda review for this Thursday, May 18th, 2023, 10 a.m. business meeting. You have a public hearing on the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, first reading of amending the System Development Charge Capital Improvement Plan, and you have all the consent agenda items from today's meeting except for H3S number 4 that we pulled. That's the agenda for this Thursday. If you have any questions on any item, please let me know. I'm happy to answer it for you prior to Thursday. Final item today is Commissioner Communications.
Thank you. Who would like to go first this morning? Commissioner Savas? You got some comments?
I'll just update you all. I know we've been talking about, last week we talked about whether we're going to do an op-ed or a letter. As you know, we approved a letter, it did go out, and we're still working on the concept of a op-ed. That's more difficult because the audience is the general public, and it's harder to convey a unified message that is not in the weeds, but is appealing, but is also constructive. So we're still working on that, and appreciate everyone's work on that, and hopefully bring you back something else. Next Monday is the Regional Tolling Advisory Committee. They have foregone the agenda that was in place, and because of the governor's order to pause, they have opened it up as a discussion for everyone around the table. It is not, we are getting communications right now that suggest maybe that the tolling project's going ahead at full steam, that this is simply a pause on the collections. That's concerning.
Oh, great.
Right? And yet, there were comments made that maybe they're not listening. So I hope that they're not listening for the sake of saying that they listened, and they're actually listening for the sake of actually making a course adjustment. So next Monday, while you are having some of your budget meetings, I will be absent in the early part of the morning. Those are the special district day. And on Tuesday, I'm also speaker or a panel at the lunch hour at the Oregon City Business Alliance, so I'll miss a portion of the budget there, but I will be with you for the remainder of that. But tolling is still, even though it's quiet out there, there's still a lot happening, and we just have concerns that how and what this is going to be. Will there be a local committee? As suggested in HB 3614, as we suggested to our state legislators on this new subcommittee of the Transportation Committee, will they actually include local voices in a meaningful way? And the Regional Tolling Advisory Committee is not local because most of those people do not sit in Clackamas County or have no interest in Clackamas County per se. It's more of a regional, hence the name Regional Tolling Advisory Committee. That's what I have for today.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Savas, and thank you for protecting the best interest of the people of this county. Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I had a great conversation. It was the reason I was a little bit late today with our trade unions this morning. We did talk about tolling. They're very pleased that the governor put a pause on it because their concern as well is the mitigation about what would that mean for our communities. And I mentioned the fact that having grown up with tolling on the East Coast, remember that they do not toll every lane. And I'm really clearly not quite
Bless you for saying that.
understanding why we're not using the same methodology here, because it is a regressive tax on people who can't afford it. So that was a great conversation with them. I enjoyed talking to them largely because my two sons are plumbers and steam fitters, as is my daughter-in-law. So I'm kind of a trades mom, and they're doing very well, and I'm very happy. And they're in the trains. They're just working constantly and have a really, really solid, good job. The other thing I wanted to mention, which was on our report here, our capital updates, and that was the child care. And on Friday afternoon, I participated with county staff in meeting with Senator Meek on House Bill 3005, which would create a $100 million fund for child care facilities to be built. I tried to make a strong case for the bill, but I do it from a different perspective. My notion is that it is a bill for prosperity for both the employers and the employees. That the models that I have looked at like the Siemens model, Daimler, the KinderCare model as well, actually allows, if we're having workforce issues and barriers to workforce, a lot of that does have to do with access to childcare. So how do we help people stay employed and be employed, because they're going to need that support system, but also what is the return on investment for the employer? And I will tell you, Siemens very strongly thinks it's a great return on investment. It decreases, people not being able to be there. It allows families to feel that their children are safely cared for. The employees are happier, productivity increases. So I continue to work on this, but I also believe it's not just the advocates who do the work, but we are pulling together with Clackamas Workforce Partnership a conversation that will include major members of our business community and their human resources people to see what their needs are. Like I said, at the national level, we are also looking at this with my CEWD committee, with our Human Resources Committee, as an economic driver for prosperity and jobs. And I'm hopeful by framing it that way, the idea that we could actually have more facilities built is critical. Clackamas Community College is pulling together an education framework whereby people get educated in early childhood education. Now, that's a good thing, because then there's another pipeline for people who may want to move from that into teaching, into nursing, into other opportunities, and this is kind of a gateway for them to start working with early childhood and seeing where it leads, whether it, again, being preschool teachers in the public school system, pediatric nurses, so on and so forth. So that's something I've been quietly working on. It really hasn't been a major priority for the board. So I've been very clear with Gary, I'm not using external dollars. We do have an early learning hub, and this is actually kind of falling under the umbrella of what they're already doing. So you'll all be invited to this. I think it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I am pulling together names of businesses that we want to have there so they can be part of the discussion. Childhood facilities are different. You have to have small toilets. You have to have small sinks. You have to have rooms that are different for different age groups and different furniture. And of course, regulatory, requirements in order to have those places be safe. So that's why the facilities piece is important. And also play areas and things of that sort. So it's just something I've been doing it because I frankly see it as a workforce issue, and it's been a federal priority with our Counties for Kids initiative at NACO. So, and also on Thursday, the Willamette Falls Locks, HCR 20 passed unanimously commemorating the 150th anniversary of the opening of the Willamette Falls Locks, and the bill's going to move to the Senate for. So that's a little nice thing to know as we try and get the locks unlocked with the new authority that is in charge. So, and that's what I've got. Okay.
Well, good. Thank you, Commissioner Schrader, and thank you for your continued advocacy for our working families. Commissioner West.
Thank you, Vice Chair Scholl. I just want to take a second to say I really believe that much of the legwork that Commissioner Schrader has been doing around early childhood development and work around workforce is really essential to where we're going to move within a modernizing our workforce as a whole. We're in a different culture, time, and as we address these issues, and we do have a child care desert in Clackamas County. And so those problems start to just compound. And to have healthy communities, I think it's essential that we do start to look at innovative ways and to address that issue. And Commissioner Schrader, I think the lens in which you're doing that with being careful about taxes and being and not and finding that public-private partnership and trying to be innovative and look at best practices across the country through NACO. I think you taking the lead on this is, even though we may not be the most vocal about this issue right now, I think that work is important, and I appreciate your efforts in that work as a colleague. And so any way I can be helpful to you, please let me know.
Well, I'd like to recruit you for NACO to go get on their public health committee. I'd like to see Commissioner Shull be on the Veterans Committee and you be on the Transportation Committee.
Well, I am open to any way I can serve. I am open to it. We can talk about that.
Because we could take over NACO. Yeah,
Here we go.
it would be glorious.
Watch out, NACO. Here comes Clackamas County. And I'll just piggyback also on what Commissioner Savas said, is I heard the head of ODOT interviewed on the radio Thursday or so last week, or maybe it was Friday. And, he gave lip service to, we want to make sure, we're taking a pause to mitigate, but it's full steam ahead, right? We're not stopping. We are going to put forward the effort to implement tolling in Clackamas County. And we're just taking a pause before we start to collect those dollars. So he made it very clear it was only on the collection. That's a huge designation that he made while being interviewed on the radio. And he tried to me, it was nothing more than lip service, because he has no answer on how to mitigate the issues in which we're all concerned about that our technical letter pointed out through their EA process. I think the county must move forward aggressively in pushing for the EIS, and then whatever measures we can as a local government with our local municipal partners, I think is essential. But you are correct. I am concerned that the public doesn't quite they see a poll. I'm getting thanked for stopping tolling. I'm sure you are, fellow commissioners. You guys, that's amazing. No. We got a little baby pause for all that effort that we did. So I'm thankful for the pause as we move forward, but we are by far not done with actually addressing the issue of tolling in Clackamas County, and then, throughout the region. So you are correct. Thank you for that update and those efforts, but that's exactly what I actually heard from the head of ODOT himself. So you're basically just conveying what ODOT is saying, so, which I think is concerning. So let's not let up. Let's keep our foot on the gas and be aggressive about dealing with this issue. So, and then I'm the liaison for the Board of County Commissioners to our Public Health Advisory Council. I had my first meeting with them yesterday, which was great. We have a bunch of new members. It was an orientation type meeting to bring on new members, telling them about our role as county commissioners and their roles as an advisory council to staff and us. And got to answer questions about, how are we looking at addressing public health issues? What lens are we addressing those things? We talked about prevention and dealing with things way upstream before they become more severe. That's a paradigm shift, not just within healthcare, but within public health in general, than how things have been done over the last few decades. So that was a really great opportunity to meet those new members of the council that want to serve and advise us and help their community out. I look forward to being quite involved in that council. I know in the past it has had some scheduling conflicts. I believe that hasn't always allowed a commissioner to be really engaged, but that is an issue I very much care about. I ran to be a commissioner to be more engaged in public health and those opportunities to help us be the best county in the state on that specific issue. And so I look forward to working with them in the future. So we have a lot going on this week. We have a lot to talk about tomorrow. Tune in. I don't need to talk about it all today because we'll be talking all week. So I will, with that, I will yield back and I look forward to doing the good work moving forward.
Thank you, Commissioner West. Last Saturday, I was at Timberline Lodge for the Wildfire Mitigation Fair. We had the county disaster management there, Ant Farm's fire fuel mitigation team, Federal Forest Service, Hoodland Fire, Sandy Fire, and PGE. One thing I want to share with you, and I didn't know about this until Saturday, was that PGE has funded a $4.5 million camera system throughout the county that has an infrared capability. And it, with 2 or more of these cameras, they have the ability to triangulate the source of a fire, can detect a fire as small as a campfire, and give a exact coordinate of the fire, and then notify first responders. So it's a tremendous asset. Sandy Fire, Hoodland Fire, they're very excited about it. But I'd like to thank PGE for this very generous investment in Clackamas County. Like I said, $4.5 million. The cameras altogether, you can go on your computer, or I think your phone also, and scan the terrain of Clackamas County. It's a tremendous asset. All we need now is to combine this Pano system with a quick reaction aerial asset to put out fires early, so we don't have to sustain the pain and the billion-dollar cost of dealing with Riverside Fire again. So thanks again to everybody in the county who's a first responder, and especially thank you to PGE. And also I'd like to thank the staff and management at Timberline Lodge. We had a fabulous time on Saturday. It was just a fabulous event. I got to talk to so many people from all across the county there. I also want to thank Jennifer Worth, the operations director in the opioid treatment program at the Great Circle Recovery Center on 82nd. The Great Circle Recovery Center is a project funded by the Grand Ronde Tribe to help mitigate the effects of opioids in our society. They administer methadone and Suboxone every day of the week. They're seeing so many patients because they describe fentanyl as 100 times more addictive than heroin or methamphetamine. This fentanyl is truly a hideous scourge on our society. I really appreciate the Grand Ronde Tribal Council and everyone who works at the Great Recovery Center for what you're doing to help the people of Clackamas County. And I was also asked to kind of pass the word. One of the other things that we can do to help them is push back Measure 110, control the border, and end cartel operations in Oregon. For anyone who knows anybody who's suffering from addiction to these devastating opioids, you can contact the Great Circle Recovery Center at 3580 Southeast 82nd Avenue in Portland, just right across the county line, or give them a call at 971-339-9240. And thanks again to everyone at the Great Circle Recovery Center for what you do for our people in Clackamas County. And that's all I have. Administrator Schmidt, do you have anything else?
Nothing else today, Vice Chair.
Commissioners, anything else?
No.
No? Okay, this issues meeting of 16 May is hereby concluded.